Prize, CLICKBAIT PR, Ownership and the Future of Investigative Journalism. I have already briefly introduced to you the speakers that we will have here. And actually with a great pleasure, I will give the floor now to the chair of this session, to Judith Bunting, former member of the European Parliament.
Thank you. Hello. Before I say anything, can I ask my kind assistant to find me a pen, because I've managed to lose mine. Thank you. So, welcome. Thank you for staying for this session. It's great to be here with you. We will have time, before we get to the panel, I want to say we will have time for questions later. So do think as we go through about any questions. Thank you. My assistant. Think of any questions that you might want to ask as we go through. We're also going to try a little experiment with interventions, which is something that we do at the Liberal Conference, the Liberal Democrat Conference in the UK, where you can get up and make a statement for 1 minute, no longer. You have to tell us who you are, what your profession is, why you're interested, and then a brief statement. It doesn't have to be a question, shouldn't be a question. And we've got space for a few of those if you feel you have a point you want to share. And I hope you will. We also have 3 video clips where I'd like to draw your attention, as we have all of the sessions today, on the fact that the internet is not the first time we've seen terrific disruption in communications across the world. So we're going to just draw a little parallel with Gutenberg and the printing press. They're just brief videos. They are not wacky. It's just text and voice. So I hope you enjoy those as we go through. But first of all, I'd like to introduce our panel, who are wonderful. So please put your hands together for Martin Capote, there in the middle, who is the senior editor and publisher, more to the point, of HU, which is the news website that has been spawned by the journalists who defected from the state broadcaster a couple of years ago, which was an amazing thing to happen. I imagine the BBC newsroom walking out and starting their own website. Just so brave, and so it's high quality journalism. Then we have Marcus Ryder, MBE, who is an active diversity campaigner and professor of media diversity at Birmingham City, who has fantastic insights into the importance of diversity in media reporting and media ownership. And Katalin Cseh, who is MEP for Hungary, one of the MEPs for Hungary, who sits on the European Parliament's Committee for Foreign Affairs. So we look forward to hearing their insights as we go through. First of all, we're going to start with our first video clip, which is about Gutenberg's dream. So, Lawrence, over to you.
Did you ever hear the dream of Gutenberg? He was just about to put forward his invention of the printing press, and it seemed to him as if an angry angel came and spoke to him.
John Gutenberg, Sie haben Ihren Namen unsterblich gemacht. Aber um welchen Preis? Überlege gut, was du tust. Die Gottlosen sind viel mehr als die Gottesfürchtigen. Eure Arbeit wird ihre Blasphemien und Lügen nur vervielfachen. Du hast den Abgrund aufgedeckt, und ein Schwarm verführerischer Geister wird von nun an herauskommen und die Erde in die Hölle verwandeln. Oh, denk an Millionen von Seelen, die durch deine Leistung verdorben wurden. Sehen Sie, wie das Gift von Teufeln in die Seelen von Jungen und Mädchen destilliert wird und sie in der Erfahrung der Sünde alt macht. Sehen Sie diese Mutter, die über ihren verdorbenen Sohn weint, und diesen grauhaarigen Vater, der sein Gesicht vor dem Scham seiner Tochter verbirgt. Zerstöre deine Presse, denn sie soll ein Anbieter der Blasphemie und der Lust sein. Zerstöre es und vergiss es. Unterlassen Sie es, sie durch die Vermehrung der Ressourcen der Bösen durch alle Zeiten zum Teilhaber ihrer Verbrechen zu machen.
So Gutenberg was about to destroy his invention, But he reflected that God's gifts, though sometimes perilous, are never bad, and that his printing press might help the intellect and wisdom which God had given to man. So he proceeded with his work and printed the Bible, the first book which went forth from the press.
So the first question that we have for the panel today is about the death of the journalistic business model and how clickbait, PR, and different models of ownership are influencing the media landscape. And first of all, Martin, I'd like to hand over to you. If you could tell us about Telex, about your funding model, and how it's influencing, how you've been influenced by media ownership models.
Yes, hello, thank you for the invitation. We, as Judith mentioned, made telex.hu more than 1.5 years ago. We quit from the Hungary's biggest news site because there was a bit of political pressure and some changes in the board. Some pro-government people came in. So all the 90 of us quit and decided to start our own news site, our own business. This is now Telex. We received, we had nothing, we had no money, we had nothing, we had no office, we had no computers, we had basically nothing. And we asked for the audience, for the readers to help our start, and they gave about 1 million euros in a few days. So we had a comfortable start, and we are living from that money. We collect money from our readers, and we have advertisement revenues as well. It's half and a half, and our goal is to be independent, to not have any kind of influential money. We want to be dependent on the readers and the supporters and the money that they give us.
So what's different? What's different between this and a subscription model?
Well, with the subscription model, you have a paywall, you have a wall, and you can read the news behind the wall if you pay. In our model, you can read anything. There's no wall. Every news, every content is accessible.
And you say that you're 50-50 advertising funding. So are you tempted to give your stories sexier headlines? And I don't ask that as a criticism. It's something media outlets have done forever to catch viewers. But are you susceptible to clickbait?
We are happy if we have more readers, but we don't state lies. We don't headline anything that is not in the article. So we don't do clickbait just to get more clicks.
Very good, very impressive. And one other trouble that I've heard many journalists talk about is PR, where you're given press releases and some outlets regurgitate them wholesale and don't check their facts. And how do you, is there a tension between time? Oh, I'm sorry, that's not supposed to go off. It's supposed to be silent. How does that affect you? Do you have the time in this funding model to check all of those facts that are presented to you?
Yeah, we try to. There's a different team who handles PR articles and paid articles, and but there's some connection between the editorial and this team. So before these kind of articles appear on the site, we know about them. We can check them if we want to, and there has been never a problem with this kind of thing that someone pays for an article which is full of untrue statements.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you. And thank you for keeping standards up. Now I'm going to turn to Marcus. Marcus, why is diversity important when it comes to the ownership and control of media outlets?
Okay, I think that diversity is important because it comes down to fundamental democratic principles of freedom of speech. You can't have freedom of speech if certain sections of your society do not have access to the media. You know, it's one thing being able to speak, but if you're speaking into a vacuum, then that's not freedom of speech. And so what you need to look at is who actually then controls the media outlets which people can actually access and promote their voices. And what you find is that there's an oligopsony in the UK when it comes to, and an oligopoly on both sides. So you have a remarkably few number of people and companies and organizations. And that's a market distortion, and that causes massive problems. Now, thankfully, I've been campaigning about this and talking about this for a long time, and people are starting to recognize that. So ITV, which is the largest commercial broadcaster, public service broadcaster in the UK, has just created a new funding model. So it's ring-fenced money. So looking at who owns the company, seeing if it is owned by women, if it's owned a certain number of ethnic minorities in the C-suite, a certain number of disabled people in the C-suite, they will ring-fence money for those companies as well to make sure those voices are being heard, not just in terms of the staff, but who actually runs the companies. And similar things are being done with regards to Channel 4, another public service broadcaster, and we're currently talking to the BBC about the criteria that they use.
And recently you had a meeting with the BBC head of news, which was publicised quite widely. Were you discussing this, or were you discussing something else?
I was discussing, it was with the Director General, it wasn't with the head of news.
Beg your pardon.
That's okay. So the story that came out is that I was tentatively appointed, supposedly for a senior current affairs position at the BBC, and allegedly the Director General of the BBC then blocked my appointment because he said that I'd campaigned too much on diversity, trying to increase diversity. The discussion was not about me when I met him, and I've got another meeting with the head of editorial policy on Monday, in fact, to progress this issue. It's really, the BBC says that it is an anti-racist organisation and an anti-sexist organisation. However, the issue is, if you look at, talking about UK legislation, if you look at the Equality Act of 2010, which looks at protected characteristics, that's women, disabilities, etc., etc. Don't worry, I'll be fast.
No,
right?
I'm really sorry, it's still doing it.
You need to, it's not just enough to employ people from these protected characteristics. They need to actually be able to live those protected characteristics. So how do you actually live those protected characteristics? You know, if you are religious, if you're a Catholic, but you're not allowed to go to church because you're then seen as being biased if you attend church, that's not really allowing yourself to be Catholic or Protestant or Muslim or whatever religion you might be. And so what I'm arguing is that the BBC hasn't really incorporated the Equality Act of 2010 as to how do people live their protected characteristics, right, without it being viewed as bias. So a real basic one of that is Reclaim the Night. Do people know Reclaim the Night? You know, or Reclaim the Street. It's women being able to go out at night time, right? Is this a campaigning issue, which then forces them not to be impartial when they are reporting, or is it an issue where a woman is expressing her gender when she goes on one of those protests, because it's fundamental to her womanhood to be able to walk the streets at night, right? And so it's not enough to say I'm anti-sexist. How do you allow women to actually live their gender? How do you allow disabled people to live their disability?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And Katalin. So, Katalin is an MEP here in the European Parliament, but more recently, you were part of the team standing for election in Hungary in the general election. So, what happened there in terms of state media control? What are you seeing in Hungary in terms of the state media?
Hello and welcome. How much time do I have for this question? Because, I don't know, I have to leave Brussels tomorrow in the evening, and I would be very, very happy to talk about this issue until then. But, okay, let me start with some questions. So, as Judith said, we just had elections. Do you know, or could you guess how many televised debates happened before a general election between the opposition candidate and the sitting prime minister on the TV? Exactly 0. Did you know when was the last time Prime Minister Orban has debated anybody on live television? 2006. Maybe some of them weren't alive then. Or do you know how much time the opposition candidate received on the public broadcaster to present his program? How many times he was invited there to speak in a live session? Yeah, Hungarian. Yeah, okay, colleague back then says the correct answer. 1 time, he was invited 1 time, and he received exactly 5 minutes of airtime. 5 minutes. And in the very same day, Mr. Orban's grand speech for a big rally was repeated 9 times. And last closing question. Do you know which media outlet allowed so-called experts in their big primetime television show who spoke about Ukraine not being a real country and President Zelensky being a drugged-up Nazi? Was it Russia Today or the Hungarian public broadcaster? Well, the answer is both. So, like, in a nutshell, this is the situation of the Hungarian public broadcaster. We heard very interesting insights about how diversity matters when it comes to ownership structures, how much control over the channels can influence not only the content of the media, but also on the general state of democracy, on public discourse. And I have to tell you, dear friends, that currently the state of affairs in Hungary do not resemble a European Union country's public media broadcaster. The state has established a total monopoly over messaging and spending and control of the media. The free media space has been shrinking dramatically over the past years. Martin is a better person than me to tell you about this because he was actually a victim of being employed by a free and independent broadcaster and was pushed out. But the situation has been deteriorating extremely rapidly. The entire election campaign was characterized by fake news, lies, and shameless campaigns of the brutest way of expressing politics. Of course, campaigns are never nice, but you cannot imagine how broadly did the Hungarian state, the Hungarian government use their own publicity channels, the media that they own, the public broadcaster that actually financed by our taxpayers' money to spread lies in the campaign about the opposition. Lies such as the opposition would like to send Hungarian youth to war in Ukraine. Lies about the opposition candidate wanting to cut pensions and privatize hospitals and all that. And it didn't happen on the official campaign channels, didn't happen from the campaigning budget of the government party, but it happened on the public broadcaster, it happened on government advertisement barriers, extremely distorting the media landscape. And just a closing thought here, because I told you I could talk a lot about. This could be vile and difficult just by itself. But if we combine it with the methods that were used in the past 12 years of the supermajority government of Mr. Orban, where he meticulously killed off independent voices, or either captured independent broadcasters and filled their board up with their own people, or just like plainly closed them down, such as they closed down the print newspaper called Népszabadság, which is basically was kind of like if somebody just decides to close the Times from one day to another, and propped up fake news propaganda websites with advertisement money to a great extent. Most Hungarians living on the countryside who do not pay for a cable service can only access either the public broadcaster or, with one exception, private channels that are very closely aligned to the government message.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the state we have to conduct politics in, and this is the state where outlets such as Telex try to bring out the voice of truth and the voice of the independent media. It is difficult.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And that's what we're all worried about. That's what we're fighting through all of these sessions. So we're now going to have the second video clip. Lauren's standing by. We will be moving into the questions about the emotions of social media. And again, let's think about how the world has faced this before. We've got now a letter written by Mark Twain back in the 19th century, but wow, how true it is of today.
All the world acknowledges that the invention of Gutenberg is the greatest event that secular history has recorded. Gutenberg's achievement created a new and wonderful earth, but at the same time, also a new hell. During the past 500 years, Gutenberg's invention has supplied both earth and hell with new occurrences, new wonders, and new faces. It found truth astir on earth and gave it wings, but untruth also was abroad, and it was supplied the double pair of wings. Science was found lurking in corners, much prosecuted. Gutenberg's invention gave it freedom on land and sea and brought it within reach of every mortal. Arts and industries, badly handicapped, received new life. Religion, which during the Middle Ages assumed tyrannical sway, was transformed into a friend and benefactor of mankind. On the other hand, war, which was conducted on a comparatively small scale, became almost universal through this agency. Gutenberg's invention, while having given to some national freedom, brought slavery to others. It became the founder and protector of human liberty, yet it made despotism possible where formerly it was impossible. What the world is today, good and bad, it owes to Gutenberg. Everything can be traced to this source, but we are bound to bring him homage, for what he said in dreams to the angered angel has been literally fulfilled. For the bad that his colossal invention has brought about is overshadowed 1,000 times by the good with which mankind has been favoured.
So, thinking about the emotional side of social media, good and bad, what I want to ask is there space for investigative journalism anymore? And where does censorship come into all of this? So, Marcus, I want to start with you this time. The first piece of yours that I ever read was about Twitter's own censorship panel and a mistake that it made. So could you tell us about that and then talk about social media?
Yeah, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they actually publish their ethnic diversity figures. They're American. Americans don't really care about disability as much, so they publish their gender figures as well of their employees. They also publish their gender and their ethnicity figures when it comes to who is writing the algorithm, so the technical side and the non-technical side. What they do not publish is that they have content moderators, and they have boards who decide who those content, what should be the guidelines of the content moderators. And they don't publish the ethnicity or the gender or any of the protected characteristics of the people who sit on those boards. It is thought that they are disproportionately male and disproportionately white, right? This has consequences. So, for example, on Facebook, they confused hashtag Al-Aqsa, which is a mosque, with a terrorist group, and so any posts which had Al-Aqsa in it were either deleted or they were downgraded. This was then discovered and said, oh, it's a human error mistake. Right? Similarly, Twitter blamed a technical error for deleting and downgrading any tweets which mentioned Sheikh Jarrah which was a Palestinian neighborhood in East Jerusalem that was being demolished. Right? Again, these are things that were discovered, right, because both social platforms admitted that there was a mistake. What's more worrying is that these decisions, lesser or greater, are being made every single day. Right? It's not just an algorithm. Sometimes we blame the algorithm as if it's like a force of nature out there. It's like some math equation that was made along with E equals MC squared. Out there, we can't do anything about it. We don't know how it works. That does happen. But also every single day, there's real human interventions with real cultural values being made as to which hashtags are going to be promoted and which hashtags are going to be deleted or demoted. Right? And so when mistakes happen, this comes to the fore. But when mistakes aren't happening, when it's actually deliberate, when they're actually succeeding, there are things, and I have no idea. I have no idea who are the people who are deciding which hashtag of mine should be promoted, which hashtag of mine is seen as dangerous and should be demoted. I'm not saying they're making the wrong decisions, but they should be accountable. And I should know who are the people making these decisions.
Thank you. And the hashtag Idea Accelerator and hashtag ELF event are not high on the list, I have to say. So, Martin, investigative reporting. Is that something, I'm going to give you a sort of double-barreled question. Is investigative reporting something key to telex, or are you more concentrating on just getting the facts right and getting the current news out there? I mean, what's the importance, what's the value of investigation?
Yep. End of the question.
And the hashtag.
Well, both of them are important for us. Investigative journalism is a hard nut in Hungary. We don't have the access for the basic informations. We don't get invited to important press conferences. We don't get interviews from government politicians. Basically, the only way we can talk with them if we spot them on the street and we go after them with the camera and the microphone, and we don't get answers at that time as well. So it's very hard because we don't get answers. We don't have the opportunities to ask the questions. I mean, we send the questions to the officials every time we want, but if we don't get answers, it's hard to do that. But it's our goal because it's an important thing of a democratic, free press country. You understand that? So it's important, but it's a very expensive style of journalism. I mean, you have to work lots of weeks, months, sometimes years to come up with a good story. But we have cooperations with others who do this, who do just this. Okay. But it's important, but it's hard in Hungary.
And it is dying out because of that cost. This is what I'm hearing from other journalists as well.
Yeah, we won't let it die out.
We won't. Excellent. And just before we move on, how do you go about getting your website seen? Do you pay lots of attention to search engine optimization and to creating your own hashtags and so on?
We are not that professionals yet. Okay. Since when we started, we didn't have time for that. We just wrote articles and news and then covered the stories. But now we see that we have to care about this because that's if we want to grow, if we want to reach more people, then we need these channels to be cared professionally. So we have to do that. But it's we are at the beginning of that road. Okay. But we use social channels, but not that professional level.
And just to make sure that people understand how successful you are, you tell us how big you are, how many followers you have in Hungary, and also just a little bit about the fact you've just expanded into Romania.
Yes. Well, I don't know the exact numbers. We have like 500,000 followers on Facebook, which is quite good compared to the other news sites. Maybe we have like 100,000 on Instagram, which is quite good. We just started TikTok. Yep. And the other question,
about Romania.
Romania. Yeah, we have a new experiment. There was a news site in Romania where we have like 1 million Hungarian-speaking people there. They have the rights to vote in Hungary, although they live in Romania, and they only have the Hungarian government propaganda news sites or news sources in Romania. And there was one smaller site which was independent, but they also had this Hungarian government pressure, so they all quit, and we started a new news site with them as well, just to let the opportunity or let the chance for them, I mean for the people in Romania that speak in Hungarian to have free press source. I mean, there's nothing else. I mean, they can only get the news from pro-government and as Katalin mentioned, the propagandistic style of news, and we believe in free press, and we had this opportunity. So we just started a few weeks ago, and we don't know how it's going to end, but we are optimistic about that.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. And Katalin, so speaking as a member of the European Parliament again now, how important is it to you as a politician that investigative reporting exists? Is it important for politicians to be investigated?
Well, if you ask me that, what do politicians think about the investigative reporters, or like, I think generally, of course, it is a major headache for everybody in power, and it should be. Because how important this is for democracy is absolutely vital. And if you ask me if, I spent a year of my life on the campaign trail, like trying as hard as possible to create a better result for the opposition, and then we totally fail, we receive a huge beating from the government, and then I turn on telex, and you have this like huge analysis of like why the campaign was bad, and you're right. Of course, you're like, I'm not happy, sure, but it has to be written. It has to be there. And for instance, if you think about successful cases like the Pegasus, which was unearthed by a group of investigative reporters, including one Hungarian, Szabolcs Panyi, who is like really a star. And after these investigations, now we have a European Parliament investigative committee. We saw that at least 3 European governments have spied on their own citizens, and there were already very strong repercussions against the company, against the governments who were involved in these activities. It is absolutely vital. And if we care about democracy as politicians, we have to care about the investigative reporting. We have to provide the money, the funding, because it's like super expensive, as it was just explained. And if the European Union also is not putting more money into possibilities to finance investigative outlets or smaller medias, then the media freedom of the Union will decrease dramatically, I believe, in the next couple of years. If we do not have stronger anti-SLAPP legislations, if we do not protect our journalists, then we won't have the scrutiny we so much need to be able to continue functioning of our democracies.
Super, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I want to turn to you. Do we have any takers for standing up and giving us 1 minute of your ideas? Come on. Okay. Could you step forward, because we have a camera? Yeah, you come up here, because then the camera can see you. We need to be transparent. Please tell us your name and who you are.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Daniel Mikets from the Republican Institute. And just very briefly, we discussed in the previous panel this bubble, which is actually the kind of a restricted public sphere for the opposition parties in Eastern Europe. And I think so the media diversity is something where readers, the audience can feel that they are represented by the media, because there are journalists who can represent them, because they partly or somehow they belong to the same social group, or at least they are aware of the problems and issues of that very specific social group. So my question would be to Marta, when it comes to media diversity in Hungary, don't you think if there is kind of a lack of diversity among journalists, and this is why the mainstream independent media, online media, is mostly focusing on the issues and cultural representation of a given social group, which is represented by the journalists themselves, and for many readers, this is something which they don't understand, because they don't understand the cultural codes, the cultural references and so on, which I don't want to blame the good journalists. But if you are aware of this phenomenon, if this phenomenon exists at all, and if you think that the online independent media, at least in Hungary, can somehow access the people out of this big city bubble, or the bubble of those people who have a high media literacy and who are conscious consumers of the media. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Martin, you can answer.
Yeah, that's an issue for us, and that's an issue for the oppositional parties as well in Hungary, because we have this bubble. I mean, we used to joke about that. We are writing our news site for the how should we say for the downtown part of Budapest, and outside of the capital or in the countryside, not many people can. Oh, actually, they could, but they don't read us that much, and we have this. We have this problem, and we want to work on it, and we have this. So we have this problem, but it's not an easy thing. I mean, we are thinking about just going down to the cities and just make some events, or just show up and say, okay, this is who we are. This is why it is important to read us. Why our work is important, but that's a tough issue, and as I said, we are pretty new. I mean, 1.5 years seems a lot, but we just trying to catch some air and so we just run. It's like a sprint race for us for the 1.5 year, but we are trying to deal with these issues. It's important.
Thank you. And Marcus?
I think it's really important not to blame the swimmer if he's swimming in, or she is swimming in dirty water. Right? Ooh. Yeah. So I think that if somebody is doing the best they can, or a company is doing the best they can, that's great. We also need to look at who is creating the environment that they're operating in, and that is invariably the government. And so we need to look at the different tax incentives, different tax breaks. We need to look at all various regulations and what have you. Because I think that too often, I'm not saying you did this, but I'm just saying too often we place the blame, or we look at the media company and say, you should be doing better. And of course, media companies and everyone should be doing better when it comes to diversity. But we also need to look at the environment which they're operating in.
And as an environment setter, what do you say, Kathleen?
Yeah, so there were talks about responsibility. I would like to talk about the responsibility of the European Union as a policymaker, because Marcus earlier spoke about how much representation matters and diversity matters. And, you know, I'm just extremely mad about how wrongly the European media support is targeted, how badly it is advertised. If I just give you a good example, maybe a year ago, there was a tender for whatever, like media funds that journalists could apply to. Do you know where it was advertised? It was put on the European Commission Twitter. Seriously, it had like 5 likes and 1 retweet, and the 1 retweet was me. And I just cannot say how mad I am that we have these resources and we do not use it. This call might even reach you because, I don't know, you're here, you speak perfect English, you are based in Budapest, and you could use the funds, and I love TEDx. I'm not saying that. But could this money reach somebody in rural Bulgaria who would like to run a blog in their hometown? Would it reach somebody in the Hungarian countryside who speaks absolutely no English and who has like no connections? Certainly not. So we need to get also to those people who do not follow European news, who do not speak languages, do not have friends who could share these calls to them. And until the EU does that, we will face we risk facing a new Brexit phenomenon when lies are being spread and we are just like stuck in our own intellectual bubble and not try to reach out to the ground where people actually live and where representation really happens.
Super. Thank you. So we'll go for one more. Oh, intervention. Here we go. Lucy Netzinger, I can introduce her. Friend, MEP, former MEP for the East of England.
Former MEP for the East of England, and so visiting from Brexit land. Yes. It's very good to be back here again. I wanted to pick up the question that you had at the, just a little bit earlier, Judith, about the importance of investigative journalism, and say how important it is, not just kind of at a national or international level, but at a really local level. So now I'm not being an MEP. I am now leading a council in Cambridgeshire in England, where we have a fantastic local newspaper journalist who does really brilliant local investigative journalism, but he does it despite the system. He does it because he's been doing it for decades and he really believes in it. The system does not help him at all. His newspaper is not interested in it. But it's so important because actually if you, it's that local level of people can really see what's going on in their local place, in their local council. If accountability disappears there, then it disappears all the way further up as well. And as Kathleen was saying, getting that funding and that those investment structures right, not only at a national and international level, but for local journalism, so that there can be local investigative journalism, I think is also really important.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And anybody else want to join the debate? Yeah, okay. Come forward so the camera can see you and ask your question.
Yes, my name's Sandra Kaduri from Keeping Channels Open. Yeah, Judith, we know each other.
Yes.
Yeah. So my question is actually about the public and why it's taking so long for them to wake up to the fact that they are being lied to all over the place. And in the UK, I'm still waiting for people to wake up a bit more to Brexit, and it just doesn't seem to be happening. So my question is really, how will seeing this war unfold and all the sort of spreading of lies that are so obviously being done, will it perhaps alter people's awareness of truth and lies and the difference, and perhaps increase public demand for more truth or more access to the truth?
Okay. Who would you like to answer first?
And anyone.
Okay, then Marcus.
Okay. So I was head of BBC Scotland Current Affairs for 8 years. So I oversaw a lot of investigations, and for people that know UK broadcasting, I oversaw the Panorama investigations, which is the BBC flagship investigations that were produced out of Scotland. So we produced a few every year. To pick up first on the why does it take so long for the public to realise they're being lied to? My theory is they were lied to for a long time, for decades before, and in some ways this is a reaction. I remember watching the Brexit coverage of the Brexit referendum, and there was a BBC journalist that was incredibly condescending to two people who ended up voting Brexit. And that person was saying, the person that was interviewing was saying that the British economy does not work for me. And the reporter was saying, yes, but the Bank of England, you know, are you really cleverer than the Bank of England? Are you really cleverer than the EU? And the condescension was insane, right? And it was not admitting the reality, which was right. The economy was not working for that particular person, but the condescension was insane. And that condescension had been going on for decades. Now, for you to then, after, when was Brexit, 2016, right? For you to then wake up after only 6 years, and Brexit was only, the vote was 2016, so it's only really kicked in the last 2-3 years, right? Yeah. To wake up, that's not a long time. You know, when you have been sowing the seeds for mistrust and of mainstream media and those politicians for decades. So I would like to think, because, you know, I won't say what I like to think, because because I oversaw the Scottish referendum. I've never revealed how I voted in that, and I've never revealed how I voted in the Brexit referendum. But I'm just saying, I don't think 3 years is a long time, you know, is what I'd say that. With regards to investigative journalism, I think it also works both ways. Investigative journalism is important because it has consequences, right? The problem that we're seeing in the UK, and I suspect in other parts of Europe, is that we're seeing investigative journalism, brilliant investigative journalism, that doesn't have consequences. You know, the politician is not resigning. The government is not being overturned. The policy is not being changed. And so, again, it's about making sure we look at the broader picture. It's not just about the journalistic organization. Journalists need politicians to also react, to give their journalism consequence and give it credibility. If half of that equation, it's almost like a deal. If half of that deal isn't being upheld, who cares if we've exposed that Boris Johnson had a party? Yes. It doesn't matter. And if it doesn't matter, then the investigative journalism that exposed it doesn't matter. Right? And that's where we're at. So we need to look at both sides of the equation.
And Marton, it strikes me that in Hungary, would you say that you're in the beginning of your own move towards Hexit? Or are you seeing an anti, or am I massively off-piste here?
No, I used to feel the signs of this, and knowing how our Prime Minister thinks, it would have made sense. But now the world is changing, I guess, because of the war. Yes. Maybe his moves are a bit narrowed. I mean, he doesn't have too much space for this this kind of movements. But there were definitely signs. I mean, he always says that we need a united, strong Europe, but he's probably one of the leaders of the Europe, of the EU, who just hits the Europe as many times as he can. Right. In Hungary. I mean, when he comes to Brussels, he I don't think he does that, or not that hard. But in Hungary, he just, there were like campaigns that were saying "Stop Brussels," all posted in Hungary. I mean, in a EU country. Where he sits in the council, he has the votes, he can, but he says stop Brussels. What does it mean?
And which reminds me, Catalin, you were speaking in Parliament just earlier this month about how the EU is going to respond to the Article 7, is that right? And the fact that it's taken years and no action has been taken against these states that are offending.
Well, Also coming back to the previous question,
Yes.
the answer is going to be similar. So until the European Union's leaders and bodies start to do politics, if they realize that they are not a purely administrative body, nothing will change. And they will repeat the Brexit mistakes over and over again. I remember when Juncker came to the end of his term, he said that his biggest mistake, that he perceived to be so, is that he didn't counter the lies that were made about the EU during the Brexit campaign. And then what's happening now, just as Martin said, half a year ago in Hungary, we had all these billboards up about how evil Brussels is. And the European Commission also had a billboard campaign that time. Did you know what it was about? It was about chicken. Seriously. Like, yeah, farm to fork strategy, I don't know, ecological eggs coming from the backyard from organic chicken. Like, seriously, there's like big, massive lie campaign against the European bodies, and they just do not dare to take up the gloves and respond, because we opposition parties couldn't use public channels. You don't get the money to advertise yourself. But the European Union and the European Commission in particular is sitting on like tons of money. They have powers to access those media that we can't, and they just have to counter the lies that are being made about the European Union, not for our sake, not for the sake of Hungary, not for my sake as a Hungarian politician, but for the sake of the entire European Union, because if it happens at one place and happens in one other place, it will happen in a third, fourth, and fifth, and sixth place. So the EU has to acknowledge the importance of bringing out the truth and doing politics and speaking directly to people, because first, so this is also this, like, when people will realize that they are being lied about, well, if the so-called truth is this like 18-page long policy paper and the other end is, I don't know, 3 words, if you have a job, if you have kids, if you do not live in the political bubble, you won't care to read this like whole long analysis. So we just have to understand the importance of being in dialogue with people in language that they can understand, and in real words and with emotions and passion. Because the EU has a soul and we have to bring it out.
And on those words, actually, I think we're going to finish. So thank you, Katalin Kech. Sorry, I'm so sorry. And thank you, Martin Kompati, and thank you, Marcus Ryder, and thank you to you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also, thank you, Judith, for the excellent moderation. I have truly enjoyed this, and I'm actually really looking up towards you as a moderator myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll take like a short 5-minute break. We're already slightly over time for the timing. So we will start at 5:08 sharp in this room with our next and almost final session for this year's Idea Accelerator, A Dare to Debate, with Dr. Alexandra Borchardt and also MEP Jana Tom. Welcome, thank you very much. It will be moderated by Lauren Mason. See you in 5. Thank you.
Thank you.